Hey everybody, time for another game theory video. And if you like the videos, like, subscribe, silly comment, support the channel if you can. I appreciate it. Thanks. Super Chat, PayPal, Patreon. If you want to support the channel, it does help. Leaving a like takes a second. If you want to, I appreciate it. Thanks. So I got asked a question. And I was asked, how would you change M.Bison? Clayton, you haven't done a video about how you would change M.Bison in this theoretical fighting game of yours. So I'm going to answer that today. Remember, you got to watch some of the other videos to talk about the system if you need a rejogging of your memory. But I'm going to blow your brain. I'm going to blow the boner out of your butthole with how crazy this is, right? Because Bison, I'm going to show you just how creative we can be with old M.Bison here in this theoretical made-up game of mine, right? Because, you know, we got skinny M.Bison, we got muscly fat M.Bison, we got Shin M.Bison. I mean, we got M.Bison that even has bombs nowadays. And you know what? I'm going to combine all these Bisons and I'm going to make it just one single character, right? Now, some of this is going to be me throwing some ideas at the wall, and maybe some are going to stick a little bit better than others, and maybe sometimes you might need to remodel it or stick them in a little bit different places. But this is generally an idea that I would work with, right? Because I don't want an EX Bison, right? I want to stay away from EX characters, right? But the beauty of this game that I've talked about is, remember, when EX moves are not just generic, oh, hey, my move now juggles. Now we can actually add unique stuff, and we can give M.Bison some of these unique abilities that he has in other versions of his characters while still trying to keep him only a singular character, right? And I'm even going to put in Shin, like super Shin M.Bison in this, right? You're going to see how I'm going to be able to put him in this game and not something stupid like, you know, Street Fighter 6 has this crap where, oh, if you let M.Bison and Akuma, if they do their 30-second taunt, they become a Shin character. That stuff is such a cheap pop and terrible because that's not something you would actually ever use. I'm going to show a way that we could actually get Shin M.Bison in a real game that you might actually use him in a real match, right? So one of the things we have to remember is I'm going to give M.Bison a lot of EX moves, okay? Right? This versatile meter, right? And one of the things I've talked about before is that I might potentially play around with is maybe before the match starts, maybe, you know, you could choose to, because remember, after each match, you know what I mean? You might only get 2 orbs back, and then the last match, you might get 1 orb back, right? But maybe you have a character that has more unique EX moves, right? And maybe that character, you would be willing to sacrifice having the ability to have 2 supers or to be able to do a level 3, right? So maybe, you know, in a normal match, you start with the ability to gain up to 2 supers, you know, your second super is your level 3, assuming you have it, right? But you only start with 3 orbs and you can only go up to 5, right? But maybe you could choose to, hey, I don't know if I'm going to use this other super. Let me start with 5 EX moves, right? But I can actually go up to 6, right? And in this situation, you know, you'd be able to get, they would gain 2 orbs back for the second round and 2 orbs back for the third round, right? This is just a, you know, idea, right? Another thing for the bomb, something I would like to do is before we get into the bomb moves, right? We'll get into the character itself. For the bomb, I've talked about before that I would like to have moves that show off the game system, right? Like I've talked about before that if your character has at least 3 stocks left of their versatile meter, right? Although they take chip damage, although they take block damage, it actually won't be broken, right? So one of the ideas, something a little bit different for the bomb I would do is just like how Gouken has that move in Street Fighter 4. His Denjin Hadouken doesn't actually dizzy you, but it actually adds to the dizzy meter when you're blocking, right? But you still actually have to hit the guy to actually then pop them for the dizzy, right? So that is something I would like to do for M.Bison's moves that actually have a bomb effect. I would like it when that bomb is planted, your guard meter slowly trickling down and your dizzy meter slowly trickling up until the bomb explodes, right? Also, I would prefer to do skinny M.Bison. So this is a M.Bison with a Psycho Crusher. But let's add some of these EX moves, right? So first of all, no, I would not give M.Bison a teleport unless it's his EX move, right? I know that might seem sacrilegious now because M.Bison have teleports in tons of games now. I would not do that because I'm going off a more old school game with a bit of a unique flair, right? But this is a M.Bison that, he doesn't have good anti-airs. If he's being fireball trapped in the corner, he's at a disadvantage, right? So being able to teleport is already going to be one of his EX moves because the character has no reversal without meter in this theoretical game of mine, right? I'm not against the ideas of EX moves and say, I think Street Fighter V, he has some stuff like that where he stomps on you and then he can stomp on you again with the EX meter. Or, when he's doing the devil reverse, whatever, he kind of teleports to the other side. So I wouldn't mind having that as one of his usages of a EX meter, something like that. So say if you with the stomp, maybe if you press 3 kicks again right when he hits you, boom, he comes down on you again, right? And it knocks you down. For the devil reverse, maybe something like he's going into one of the devil reverses or something like that. Maybe if you press forward or forward 3 punches, this sort of fades out, this devil reverse, and then he comes on the other side and he hits you, right? I wouldn't be against that because that's not something generic like, oh, it's, hey, just an EX move that always juggles you, right? This is a little bit of a unique flair. So he has something, I'm thinking a little bit something similar to Street Fighter V, but I would like to have this actually phase out a little bit more so it's a little bit more ambiguous, right? But now let's get into the meat and bones of something actually creative, not done before, right? So he has the paint the fence move, right? How can we make the paint the fence move actually unique, right? Well, one, I would make the move an overhead, okay? And if we're thinking about an overhead in an old school game, something interesting about a game like Street Fighter 2 or Super Turbo, if you recall, when Ryu does his overhead, it does drastically different frame data. If it hits you on standing, I think you're just at even. But if it hits you on a ducking opponent, actually, right, it actually lets you link off of it. So that's something for Bison's paint the fence that I would just do, besides the fact that he can kind of try to swat a fireball. If it actually hits the guy when they're ducking, it actually gives you a little bit of frame advantage to actually link off of it. But, again, just for what it's worth, I would make this move a overhead. But here, let's get into some more wacky stuff, right? One of the things I would do with this, and we're going to get into even combos you could do with this or different meta you could do with it, right? After the paint the fence, for an EX bar of your choosing of what you want to do, he can go into his different special moves, right? So if after the paint the fence, if you use EX meter and you wouldn't have to charge it, if you just press back forward kick, he does a scissor kick, right? The knee press, whatever, right? But when you do the knee press off it like this, it's a championship edition, let's say, property of the attack, and it lets you then link off of it, right? Let's say if you were to do a Psycho Crusher off of it. So after a, paint the fence hits, if you do a Psycho Crusher, let's say Bison, he twirls around and he hits the guy to the corner of the screen. Let's say, imagine something like Street Fighter V, like the Super or something. It doesn't need to be that whole overblown animation or something like this, but let's say he does a Psycho Crusher, does the same amount of damage as a regular Psycho Crusher, but it gives you corner, right? Now, let's say for another motion after the EX, or after this paint the fence, if you wanted to use EX bar, he could do, let's say, this move, right? Where that, I don't know, he like hits you with a fireball or something like that. But let's say that this plants a grenade on you or something like this. So maybe this is the option you would want to do if the guy is blocking or something like that. I'm going to waste it, but it plants a bomb on the guy. And remember, in this theoretical game, let's say that when it hits the guy like this, right? Remember, their dizzy is slowly going up even when they blocked it, right? Just like their guard meter is slowly trickling down, right? But remember, one of the gimmicks of this game, as long as you have more than 3 bars, right? Your guard meter can't actually be broken, even though it can be flashing, right? So this is a little bit of a tug of war of my meter versus your meter in this theoretical game. Also, for what it's worth, after, if you want to go for some mix up, these sort of things that I showed before here are free. If you were to do a head stomp out of it, it doesn't cost extra to come back down on the guy, and it doesn't cost extra to kind of phase in, phase out teleport for the Devil's Reverse, right? So we're making this move actually a little bit more unique. Instead of, you think of CVS2, what did you use it for? Paint defense, basically, right? It did a little bit of chip damage, but, and it got away fireballs. But I want to make this actually unique, right? Another thing you could do is to, because we want to give love to some of these other things, let's say, Bison in Street Fighter V, he has that thing where if he swats a fireball, he can throw a fireball back, right? But I want to do something unique. I want to throw love to these old school games, right? So let's say when he swats the fireball for an EX bar, well, guess what? He swats it with his hand, and then he holds up his hand, and he does this move, that he had in the Marvel games. And I think he has as a super in the Street Fighter EX games as well, right? And remember, even in, I think it's the SNK vs. Capcom for the Neo Geo Pocket, when he does this move, right, it does huge dizzy, right? So this could be a thing for Bison because, again, this is a Bison that he has no anti-airs. He's weak anti-air-wise. Not like, say, I think in Street Fighter V and Street Fighter 6, I think they even made his, Duck Fierce an actual anti-air or something like that. He, swats it up. Bison doesn't have anything like this in my theoretical game, right? Just like he can't teleport away from shit. If he's in the corner, he's getting fucked, right? But something like this, say he's being pressured by fireballs, if he has time to get out of paint defense, he can then spend EX meter, and then guess what? He does this slow, trickling little fireball that allows Bison to try to work his way back in because then it explodes into this big thing. And even if it hits the guy ducking, does all this dizzy on the guy. It won't actually dizzy the guy, right? But it adds to the guy's dizzy. Drains their guard meter too, right? Throw a little bit of love on this. Instead of just something generic like Street Fighter V, he throws a fireball. Throw a little bit of love into a game like this. So Bison can try to, follow the fireball, the slow trickling fireball to get back in himself, right? Something else I would give him is, well, he does just have a regular fireball. But since this is a Bison that doesn't have just a regular fireball, this is Psycho Crusher Bison, I would give Bison, for one of his EX moves, a fireball. His slow Street Fighter Alpha fireball. But guess what? In this circumstance, I would say on block, right? On block or whatever, it does the guard and the dizzy, but this one, since it's an actual just fireball like this, since it's a little bit more versatile, it would not actually create the bomb effect unless it actually hits the opponent for real. Does that make sense? So I'm fine with it. Even if the guy blocked it, their dizzy meter goes up and their guard meter goes down. But for it to actually plant on the guy and then explode, it actually has to hit the guy, right? So let's look at some of this just like this theoretical idea of Bison, what we've already talked about, that you could do some crazy stuff in a game. Let's say Bison jumps in, jump roundhouse, duck forward, right? Cancels into the paint defense. It hits the guy. Now for EX meter, what he could do, one, he could then cancel into the scissor kick. Now the move has properties of, say, Championship Edition Bison, where he can link off of it. Oh, then he does jab, duck meter kick, Psycho Crusher. That's kind of a interesting thing, right? But what about this, right? What if we're going to waste all our meter on it? Let's say we have 3 bars and we're going to use 3 bars of our EX thing, right? Okay, so we do jump in roundhouse, right? Jump in roundhouse, duck medium kick, paint defense, EX meter. Now we cancel to the Psycho Crusher. Now we know when we do this Psycho Crusher, it doesn't need to do a big long animation like Street Fighter V, but he hits the guy all the way to the corner. And remember in Street Fighter V, he then teleports back after the guy hits the corner. Well, what is one of the gimmicks I say when you did that special cancel system of the game I talked about? It allows you to do EX meter to cancel it moves for free. So it doesn't actually take 3 bars to do it, right? Because it's already implemented in it. So in this case, since Bison is right here, we can then cancel into the EX Fireball. Now the EX Fireball slowly trickling to the guy who is then slumped in the corner, right? Boom, then the Fireball hits, right? Well, now we know they have a grenade on them. And because it hits so slow, that means Bison can then jump in. He does a jump in roundhouse. He starts to combo the guy. Maybe he does a Psycho Crusher. Then the bomb hits. Oh shit, right? Well, then maybe he jumps up. Then he does another combo on the guy, something like that. Do you see how a simple thing like this Not a generic way. No other character, like I said, the great thing about the system of the game I've talked about in giving characters actual unique EX moves, nobody uses the system the same way. It's not just, oh, hey, my EX move juggles. You know what I mean? Oh, hey, my EX move juggles. There's actual like different things you can do, and it's specific to the character, right? So again, normally you might think, oh, is the guy blocking? I want to waste a meter after paint defense. Well, guess what? I'm going to plant a bomb on him like this, right? Well, if he actually hits, well, guess what? We have another choice, right? Well, if it hit, you know, maybe if we only want to use 1 bar, we'll go into a championship edition sort of combo then, right? If we want to waste 3 bars, well, man, maybe we'll go into this. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, man, we got some wacky, crazy combo video stuff for the people that like the combo video stuff, right? Now, Shin and Bison, I would put this in. I would give M.Bison 8 install, right? Something that can only be started at the beginning of a match, right? Because we'll see him come down in that cool blue and purple aura, right? Before the match starts. Now, something I talked about before when I made my video about one of the changes I might do for Saddam. I said maybe before the match starts, if you're holding down 3 punches or something like that, he takes his katanas. He has katanas instead of the sais, right? And the katanas give you a couple of new moves, right? And it allows him to do, you know, he has better priority. You know, some of his moves do block damage, right? Something like that. So say Bison for something like this, you can pick Shin and Bison, but you have to be holding down 3 punches or something when the match starts, and it costs you 3 bars of your versatile meter. Now, you might think that, well, this might be too powerful, but remember, the versatile meter is, what did I say, very important, because if you don't have, you need 3 bars or more. If you don't have 3 bars or more, you can die from block damage. If you don't have 3 bars or more, you can get your guard broken. And I plan on having, like I said, characters that can guard crush you really easily. Look at M.Bison. M.Bison has moves that even if he hasn't technically hit you, you're building dizzy and you're losing your guard meter, right? So this is why I said something like Bison might be interesting, because maybe you're like, oh shit, maybe I want to pick Bison. Because guess what? If you start the match with EX or Shin and Bison, guess what? That means you have no EX bar though. You can't do any of like alpha counter, wake up attack, no EX moves whatsoever, right? So maybe there might be a character or a person be like, well, maybe I want to pick Shin and Bison. I'll give up the ability to do one of my supers, because then I can start with 5 EX meter, right? And that means I still have 2 EX bars right there, right? But again, and this too, remember, if you're playing something like this, you'll never be able to theoretically use Shin and Bison more than 2 rounds. And if you were to do that, so say you used him the first round, the very first round you use him, well, guess what? The second round, you only build 2 EX bars, right? It only gives you 1 free. And then the final round, you'll get 1. So that means you would not have to use any EX bar again, the next round, right? And then that very final round, you might be able to use it again. But then that also means that that entire match that you played, you could never do a single EX move, never a special move cancel. You will always be able to get your guard broken, all that kind of stuff, right? So a little bit of a choice here. But what would you get for Shin and Bison though? Let's talk about this, right? I would do stuff like this. So say the M.Bison in Alpha 3, right? His fierce attacks, they get bigger hurt boxes and hit boxes, right? So maybe M.Bison, if we're thinking about a character like Super Turbo and Bison, what is one of the changes they even give him in like that HD remix and the new legacy? They even give him like more priority on his jabs, because his jabs couldn't like stop E-Honda headbutt effectively, that kind of stuff. Like, I'm fine with the M.Bison being like that, with being weak with stuff like that. So maybe regular M.Bison, his priority isn't always the greatest. His anti-airs aren't always the greatest, but if you're Shin Bison, some of his moves have better hitboxes, right? Another very wacky thing that I haven't mentioned yet for Bison that I would give him, in Super Turbo, grab throws, right? I know this is a long video, but this is the nerdiness that some people like, right? And I've thought this stuff out before, right? In Super Turbo, remember, if you do grab throws, right? Grab throws can't be teched, right? Okay. But another strange thing about grab throws is, remember, you cannot choose the direction that you throw a character. So in Bison, just for what it's worth, when he is not Shin and Bison, he has a punch throw, which can throw you back or forth, okay? And he has kick throw, which if I was making the game, functions like a grab throw. So it cannot be teched or whatever, right? But he can only throw you one direction. And I would always say he can only throw you behind him, right? So if he's pressuring you in the corner, he cannot throw you in the corner and then because what I would do is I would say that M.Bison, after a kick throw, when he kick throws the guy back in the corner like that, you can jump up and do a jump, medium punch, juggle like Super Turbo. And then maybe say the paint defense has a hit of juggle property or something like that. So then you could swipe the guy down, something like that. And then maybe this is a situation where you might be like, oh, let me waste the EX meter for. In this situation, maybe I'll use something like this because then the guy's knocked down. Oh, which way am I going to come up? He has to guess left or right to which way to block, something like that. A little bit tricky there. That might be a situation you might use that, right? However, when you pick Shin Bison, his punch throw changes. And his punch throw becomes the throw that he has in Street Fighter V where the guy does, woo, they circle, and then he shoots the guy away. And let's say his punch throw then gives you a bomb effect. So the kick throw, guaranteed damage, but he can only throw you behind him, right? But it does a lot of damage. But once you get Shin Bison, you can punch throw any direction. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but guess what? It automatically plants a bomb on you for some setups. Also, I would say if you're Shin Bison, guess what? You don't need to use EX meter to teleport anymore. So now he actually has a reversal. Also, when you do the fireball, that is an EX move. Even on block, the fireball will now explode, right? Before it just does building your dizzy and draining your guard meter. Now it actually explodes. So there might be setups if you see the guy blocks it, right? Also, let's say for this thing too, again, teleport stuff, again, maybe that doesn't cost EX meter, something like that, right? And maybe his regular dash is the Street Fighter V dash and he can body hop you, cross over your body, something like that. Finally, what would I do for supers with Bison? Well, when you're not in Shin Bison, I would say, get the knee press nightmare where then at the end he kicks you a few times, blah, 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 blah. Maybe when you're Shin Bison and you do the level 1 knee press nightmare, whatever, maybe he kind of does a Marvel-esque version of it where you see multiple people of him and he keeps hitting you, blah, 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 blah. And then boom, he comes down on you while flamed like this or something like that. Boom. Something like that. A little bit more flair to it. Maybe it does a little bit more damage. Another super I would give him is he has this super in Street Fighter 4 and I don't think he has it in Street Fighter 5. He has something like it in Street Fighter 6, but where he kind of stomps on you or he hits you and you pop up. But I would give it a little bit of a different animation after the stomp. I would just say after the stomp and, he could teleport the other side or something like that. Why not just have him grab your head and do some kind of weird pink psycho power or something like that? And it's like the Street Fighter anime. I don't know why he has to grab your heart. I kind of think of Bison as being a psycho power, like kind of seems like he should be kind of like controlling your brain. So I don't get the whole heart thing. So I would just have it sort of like a Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 6 thing, but instead of after the stomp of him grabbing your heart, he psycho powers your head and it plants a bomb. So a super that doesn't do a lot of damage, but guess what? Has some invincibility, can come down on either side of you and then plants a bomb on you, right? And then finally, of course, yes, I would give Shin Bison the Super Psycho Crusher. And yes, I would make it full screen. Big, huge, half-life super, who knows, maybe 60% super. If the guy jumps anywhere on the screen, they're basically fucked. You've committed to losing 60% of your life. But it costs a level 3. And remember, maybe in this theoretical game, maybe if you're a person that wants to play Shin Bison, maybe you're a person that might never have access to a level 3. Because remember, you need to waste 3 EX bars to even become Shin Bison in the first place, right? So that means you don't get this huge super 60% life if the guy is in the air from half screen away or full screen away even. If you see him even neutral jump, oh fuck, you could just do a level 3 Super Psycho Crusher. 60% life, right? Complete bullshit. But I'm fine with that because technically, guess what? This is a super that you theoretically can't even see. This is a super that you could theoretically maybe only see once an entire match out of 3 matches, right? Out of 3 rounds even, right? So I'm fine with that. Also, his alpha counter, I would give him the alpha counter that he has in CVS 2, and then this was actually a regular move in CVS 1, if you're old enough to remember that, where he kind of gut punches you and then he punches you away. And then but in this version of the game, after the alpha counter, after it hits, I would say that plants a bomb too. So say then he has that sort of CVS 2 thing where after an alpha counter, you can actually hit a Psycho Crusher super. Maybe in this theoretical game, well, fuck. I hit an alpha counter, boom, kind of like CVS 2, but it's this big super, boom, huge level 3. Then after the guy's flying in there, oh shit, then the bomb pops, he explodes. Well shit, then in Bison, he jumps up and starts comboing you again. I'm fine with that. Who knows, maybe, I kind of would like to see this move not just be only be available only if you've hit a fireball, but I don't know. Maybe Shin Bison can use that as a super too, if he wants, for a way to kind of trickle himself in or some shit like that. But those are kind of the basic ideas of what I would do in Bison. And hopefully you can see that this is a way to kind of try to add every idea of M.Bison in every game without just having a EX M.Bison. Or, oh, hey, we have Shin M.Bison as a separate character. Oh, we have a skinny M.Bison. Oh, we have a fat M.Bison. Oh, we have M.Bison with the bomb. Oh, we have M.Bison riding a horse. Like in these other fucking games, right? I just want one M.Bison, but the beauty of when you actually have EX moves that are not just generic for every character, although I guess for what it's worth, I did say some of M.Bison's EX moves and say Street Fighter V, I guess, aren't totally terrible, but, let's rework them a bit, right? But in general speaking, when you think about EX moves are terrible, it's just like, oh, hey, my move is now invincible. Oh, hey, my move now juggles. Fucking terrible. Here we can actually do something, and we can even see a strategy here that maybe M.Bison is a character that might be like, oh, fuck. Maybe I want to spend more EX moves because I have so many interesting EX moves, right? I have so many different interesting ways to use my EX meter. And remember, this is a valuable asset because remember, you only start off with 3, right? And then the next round, you'll gain 2 back. And then the final round, you'll gain 1 back. But remember, that means that theoretically, you could only be Shin and Bison if that's what you chose to do in 2 rounds if the match became 3 rounds, right? And it also means that you would actually never be able to use a single EX move. Never alpha counter, right? Nothing like that, right? So maybe in that situation, you're like, fuck, well, maybe I'll use this because then I'll have the ability, maybe I'll be able to use Shin and Bison with some EX moves. Whereas if you want both your supers and you want to be able to use M.Bison, maybe you might be a character like, fuck, I'm going to play the first 2 rounds and I'm going to try to not use any EX meter or something like that. Because then if it goes to 3 rounds, well, guess what? Then I know I got Shin and Bison the final round and I got 3 EX moves, which are all very versatile. Right? And you're like, damn, that's going to be an uphill struggle. And at least in a situation like this isn't something where, again, Street Fighter 6, it's such a cheap pop that people are like, oh yeah, you have this 30-second taunt. And if you get through the 30-second taunt, then you can play Shin and Bison or Shin Akuma. It's retarded, right? Because it's like, why would you ever do that? At least in this as a theoretical situation where you might have like, maybe I'm going to go for Shin and Bison this match. Right? And I think that's cool, right? And I think I've showed that we can actually add a new spin on the character while still appreciating the lure of multiple versions of the character. And even this, like I said, man, that's a pretty cool combo, right? Because this is M.Bison that, if we're thinking about, old school Street Fighter, M.Bison doesn't have really a lot of links. He has like jab to like duck medium kick. That's basically his only link. Not that M.Bison doesn't have, dizzy combos in Super Turbo, but he's a little bit limited in links, and I'm fine with that. But at least with this M.Bison, and he doesn't have a lot of cancelable normals either, right? But at least with this, even though he might only have a couple of cancelable normals, we do have a special move that is very versatile if you use your EX meter, and it can be used for multiple different things. Maybe this is M.Bison's dizzy combo, right? Because every character should have a theoretical dizzy combo that they can one-shot you. But again, if M.Bison does this, we know it took him 3 bars. So guess what? That means that he couldn't have been Shin Akuma, right? Maybe that might be something kind of interesting. Imagine that. Imagine M.Bison doesn't have a dizzy combo when he's Shin Akuma because he doesn't have access to the meter to do it, right? Unless he were to be, give up one of his supers, then you could have a theoretical situation where he still could have a dizzy combo. But, maybe you could think about that. You're like, oh shit, if I'm going to go for Shin and Bison in a match, I don't have access to ever do a dizzy combo, which is, I guess you probably shouldn't play your entire thought process of a match shouldn't be like, oh, I got to do my dizzy combo, but at least it's there. Anyway, I got asked to do this video. Remember, if you like this video, like, sub, silly comment, share, support the channel if you can. I appreciate it. Thanks. The end.